All right, here we go with Chapter 7, The French Defense from our 1E4 course. How are you doing, Jesse?
I'm doing well, Matt. How you doing?
Just as good as our blooper recording. So we start out with E4, E6, French Defense, third most popular system against 1E4. And we're going to try to play in a similar style to our C3 Sicilian lines. We're recommending D4. After D5, we recommend E5. Notice these pawns pointing towards the black king side. That gives us potential long-term attack over there. And then after C5, we're recommending C3. So this is going to be kind of similar to some of the C3 Sicilian lines. So at this point, we're already at a branch. What lines are we going to look at here?
Yep, so we're going to look at three moves from this position: knight c6, queen b6, and c takes d4. So let's start with knight c6. I think this is probably looks like the slightly most common move in this position. After knight c3, we are going to play knight f3. Sorry, knight c6, not knight c3, knight c6, knight f3, just to reinforce the d pawn. And we're at another branching point here. And a lot of these lines are going to likely transpose to each other, so it will avoid transpositions in these side lines. So let's look at the immediate queen b6, putting pressure on the d pawn. We have it properly defended at this point. So how are we going to go about this position from here, Matt?
So I went back and forth on this one a little bit because in my chess career, I played the advanced for a while, and then I also played the Tarrasch variation for quite a while. And I really wanted to stick with the advanced for this course. So the recommendation that I ended up picking was 6A3. And what I like about this move is it's tricky and it kind of will put the game hopefully in our court. And our plan is to play B4 next, allowing the C1 bishop to possibly go to B2 to help defend in the center. So it's kind of like an offbeat line slightly, um, but there's a lot of like common ideas that we can use so that we don't have to memorize a ton of theory. And one cool thing with this line that I really like, the most popular move at the club level is actually a mistake. I do like to look for those types of moves in our courses where we can possibly encourage the opponent to make a mistake or the mistakes are pretty common. C takes D4 is the most popular move here. And this makes it very easy for us to get developed while keeping the space advantage. So how are we going to counter this move?
Yeah, well, taking with the knight doesn't work super well because it can take our e-pawn for free. So let's just keep our pawn structure intact and take with the c-pawn. And what I like about this move too is it frees up the c3 square for our knight. So it kind of helps our development as well as our pawn structure. So that kind of maybe highlights why it's an issue there for white. Not losing or anything, but there's much more critical ways to play. So let's look at knight ge7 here. And here, black is probably going for a maneuver like this where they can put extra pressure on our d pawn. So we want to be able to counter that in kind of a tricky way. So we'll play knight c3 here. And we're going to see in their next few moves what we're going to do if they try to attack our d pawn.
Yeah, this is the key idea to know in these lines. After knight to f5 with a triple attack on the d pawn, it looks like at first glance there's no easy way to defend it because a move like bishop to e3 would leave the b2 pawn undefended. The key idea here to remember is we have knight to a4. And if black plays queen to a5, checking us, our queen does defend the knight. So we can actually just play b4 on that line. And queen to a5 does not help black at all. So this is the cool way that we have to defend d4 with tactics by kicking the queen. So the most common move here is queen back to c7. And now our recommendation is pawn to g4. I love these g pawn pushes. JD was talking about these earlier with me today. What I like about this is we're gaining extra space on the king side, and it's not very easy for black to attack us on that flank. So at this point, black is going to tend to sacrifice on d4 or retreat the knight to e7. You're most likely to see one of those two. Um, and I think the engine might have actually said the sacrifice is best. Yeah, I just peeked at it, or at least it's tied for equal. But in both cases, we have a 1 point advantage. So let's start with knight f to e7.
Yep. So the other line would be taking here, queen takes, and we get a piece for two pawns. But this is the much more natural looking move, especially after we just crazily threw our G pawn down the board. So what we're going to do here is play bishop e3, just develop a piece. And a way to remember this one is we really want our rook on the c file, pinning this queen. So let's quick get our bishop out of the way. And e3 is the most nice looking square, just adding a little extra protection to our weakest pawn. So bishop e3. Um, Again, looking to go rook c1 very quickly. And after knight g6, we have a pretty nice move here, and that is h4. Just throwing our h4 pawn down the board. I like this move a lot. So this is where the line ends. So what's the plan from here, Matt?
So we're looking at a 2.3 on stockfish advantage, which is almost a full piece already. And that's due to the space, first of all. We have activity, and we also have the initiative. So those three factors are adding up to the 2.3 edge. And to answer your question, our plan is bishop to d3, rook to c1. We would like to play h5 as well, just putting that knight in more danger. And if black plays a move like h5 themselves, we can actually take this pawn. And if rook takes h5, now this is getting a little bit shaky for black on the light squares, and it actually makes it even a bit easier for us to attack on the king side. So nice king side attack in this first line. This is going to be the most popular moves at the club level for black. And we ended you with a 2.3 stockfish edge. So we should be pretty
You're wel-
happy if they play that c takes d mistake on move 6.
yeah, you're welcome.
You're welcome. Yes. All right, so let's go back to move 6 for black. We'll give them a better option. Let's look at bishop to d7. What are we going to do against this?
Yep, so against bishop d7, they're not really doing anything to prevent our b4 plan. So we can go for it now. And a thing to remember here is they're almost always going to take the d pawn. If they take the other way, we just get a really good position anyway. So we're only going to cover c takes d4 lines because this just leads to a really good position as well.
Wait, can I add something? If they
No,
take on b4, we actually would like to take with the a pawn.
oh, sorry.
That's okay. So c takes b will transpose to c takes d, but we can actually take with the a pawn, and this is a better version for us because now we have an extra center pawn, and we have our rook lined up down the a file. So black should take on d4, and they may think that they're the same because it honestly looks like we're just going to take back with c. If they take the b pawn, take back with a, and you can get a slight advantage compared to this version. Okay, so c takes d, knight g to e7, and now we get knight to c3 again. So whenever we see that c pawn gone, it makes it a lot easier for us to develop our knight. And black wants to play, just like we saw in the previous line, knight to f5. Now what, Jesse?
Yeah, well, we kind of have the same idea. So knight a4, not allowing them to take here without us taking their queen. So a nice kind of counter attack type of move. Queen c7, and here they're attacking our pawn a couple times. So we want to over defend it. Bishop b2, setting another defender, and again looking for this really quick rook c1 move. So anything else to say about bishop b2 here?
I would like to throw some stats out. We're looking at a 68% white is winning at the club database to 28% for black. And I put stats in a couple points in this chapter. It seems like it's always in the 60% white winning, 20% black winning range. So that's looking pretty good. And we would like to get this bishop to d3 and castle kingside. That's kind of the plan in the next few moves. Let's look at bishop to e7. If black plays b5, which is a tempting move there, we can play knight to c5, which is a really good outpost for the knight. Bishop e7, get our rook on the open file. A6 is the most popular move. And at this point, you could play h4 and play that aggressively. I'm recommending that first we get castled and then we look to expand in this variation. So let's start with bishop to d3.
Yep. So after bishop d3, black can castle. Now we can castle. So mission accomplished. Getting castled. We have same side castling, and black can go b5. And just like Matt said before, after b5, this seems like a bit of a mistake because we can plant our knight right in on c5. And if they do take us, we're going to get a nice passed, or we could go for a nice pass pawn. But actually, what we're going to do instead is rook takes and really pressure this queen, pin the knight, and we're working with an open file here, and black has some open pawns to deal with.
So what I
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's the plan for going from here?
what I like about this is we're going to use that rook on c5 to just try to cement the queen side, and the center is already well locked up. And then we're going to push on the king side to create our attack. And it looks sneaky here because we're already castled king side, so black's probably thinking like, oh, there's no pawn storm coming, or the thought's not even crossing their mind for king side attack. But look at this plan: g4, h4, knight g5. This bishop can drop back to b1, and the queen can come up to d3, hitting h7. So we can use all of these rearranging moves to just get everything pointing at the black king side while we have the queen side locked down. Like if black tries to play a5, b5 is double attacked. And how long is it going to take black to get that rook out of there on the c5 square? Even if they get a rook to c8, offer the trade, we could always take back with the pawn. So really, we have a lot of time here to get this kingside attack developed. Guess what the stockfish eval is in this position?
Um, one.
2.5. It's in the
I
notes.
knew
I know you saw it.
that. I wanted to make it a little more dramatic, like, oh, it doesn't look like more than one.
Yeah, I like it.
2.5.